Today's episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network, brought to you, as always, by ZipRecruiter. You know what's not smart? Doubting the Golden State Warriors right now. That's not smart. I think they're fine. I think they got over this little hiccup, but we'll talk about it in 1 second after the break. You know what else isn't smart? Job sites that overwhelm you with tons of the wrong resumes. Luckily, there's a smart way at ZipRecruiter.com/BS. They find people with the right skills for your job. They actively invite them to apply. You get qualified candidates fast. Right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/BS. ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire. Meanwhile, SeatGeek is the best app for buying and selling tickets to sporting events, concerts, and more. For $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase on any game or sporting event, use promo code BS. That includes Thanksgiving games on Thursday. Who knows? That includes college football. That includes basketball. What else? Hockey? I don't know what else I can offer you. Download the SeatGeek app or go right to SeatGeek.com. We're also brought to you by TheRinger.com, the world's best website, as well as the Ringer Podcast Network, which just launched Shea Serrano's new podcast. It's called Villains. It's 8 episodes. Episode 1 is up about Hannibal Lecter. You've heard Shea in this podcast a cajillion times, and now we have his own podcast for him. So there you go for that. Don't forget to check out all the awesome podcasts we have on the Ringer Podcast Network. Coming up, Conan O'Brien, and I'm going to do some football picks as well. First, Pearl Jam. All right, we have Conan O'Brien coming up in a little bit. It is an interview we taped 2 days ago. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. I think you will too. I think it's one of the best long form interviews we've done this year. But I guess you'll be the judge. I want to talk about a couple things. One is this Warriors thing. Just very quickly, I was fascinated by this story the last 2 days. Sometimes you see with the internet, with the 24/7 talk cycle, and with podcasts and everything, everyone's trying to get their traffic, their points. This just had a lot of meat on the bone. This went in a lot of different directions. And we talked about it with Chris Ryan on the last podcast. And right after we finished, we found out that Draymond had gotten suspended without pay for a day. And I had to redo the little intro about it. Look at the little science fiction I pulled on you guys. You didn't realize that I taped the intro after. But I have been monitoring this story for the last 2 days. Everybody has been basically writing the same take while pretending they have no information on it. I don't think there is new information. I think it's pretty clear what happened. These guys have just been playing together for a few years. Basketball players get mad at each other, but the one underlying thing that made this one different was the resentment of KD's whole situation kind of spilled over and spilled out. And, you know, it is funny. Draymond does feel like this is his team. And I think he felt disrespected because KD was mad that he didn't get past the ball at the end. He didn't like the way he was talked to, and it just kind of escalated. They started yelling at each other. I was most surprised that they suspended him without pay, because that told me that what we're hearing, what's coming out about what he apparently said in the huddle, was actually probably a little bit worse and cut a little bit deeper than that, and that some line was crossed. And you could kind of see it from KD's body language in the clips, which ESPN ran for 3 straight days. And I tried to watch most of the replays over and over again. But something happened in the verbal diarrhea that was going back and forth, that some line was crossed. And I don't think it was him calling KD a bitch. And I don't think it was him saying, whatever he said about free agency and all that. I think it was more personal than that. And I think that's what caused the suspension and whatever. It's heat of the moment. People say things they regret. But it would be really, really interesting if the one thing that could prevent this Warriors team from being a 3-in-a-row champ, 3 in 4 years, 4 in a row, 5 in a row, whatever, is just, you know, all of these outside forces imploding the team a little bit, because we've seen this happen really every time we've had a chance to see this happen. You know, you go back to the 70s, Bill Walton gets hurt. Portland should have won, I would say, 6 or 7 titles if Bill Walton stays healthy. Now, his feet weren't meant to stay healthy. That was part of the reason they only won 1 title. But the way that just kind of unraveled, and he ended up suing the team, and then he left, and it just ended in the worst way possible. But injuries were a big part of that. Then you go to the 80s, the Celtics and the Lakers are just basically splitting up all the titles. They both had their kind of mini dynasties. Neither of them was like an official dynasty. It was like a ditender nasty. I forget what the word what I called that was. Ditender nastery, contender cross of the dynasty. But I think if Len Bias had lived and had been at least as good as James Worthy or whatever, I think maybe the Celtics win 5 or 6 and maybe the Lakers win 4. Who knows? They were splitting all the titles up during that stretch. The one team that had a chance to beat them was the Rockets, and the Rockets got sidetracked by cocaine and a whole bunch of other things. So the 80s are out. The 90s, MJ and those guys won 6. Probably could have been more. And I wrote about this back in February about, MJ retired because he didn't have a team. They won 3. He left. He came back. They won 3 more. And the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, and the GM, Jerry Krause, were very interested in moving on from that team and Jordan and Phil Jackson and Scottie Pippen and everybody. And they kind of imploded it. And they blew it up. They didn't take care of Scottie Pippen. That one didn't end for the right reasons, I don't feel like. And I feel the same way about the Shaq and Kobe in the 2000s, where you saw they won 3 titles and the over-under was probably 5.5. It completely imploded. That was the all-time implosion. And I think there's been a lot of revisionist history over the years about why that imploded. But it imploded for a specific reason. Shaq and Kobe hated each other, and everybody hated playing with Kobe and coaching Kobe. And it unraveled. And if you don't believe me, go buy The Last Season, which was Phil Jackson's book about that whole season. And there are literally dozens of anecdotes about how bad that season was for everybody involved. Shaq wasn't guilt-free either. It just was time for that team to break up, but it was a shame. And it definitely did not last as long as it should have. Shaq only was there. He showed up in 96. He left in 04. So that wasn't great. Then you go, the next chance we had really was the Heat in 2011. They ended up staying together 4 years. And I think that fell apart less because of, people turning on each other and all that stuff. Really, like Dwayne Wade just got old a little faster than I think than we expected. He just was not a top 10 player anymore. And I think LeBron sensed it. And I will always believe he went back to Cleveland because it was a better basketball situation. I wrote that at the time. Nobody will ever dissuade me otherwise. The team that he had in the finals was basically just him and Chris Bosh and 2/3 of Dwayne Wade and nobody else. And he knew that wasn't going to be good enough with the way the league was changing. So he left and he went to Cleveland and he tried to build a new contender there. But, that had less to do with egos and more of just circumstance and time and the guys catching each other maybe a year or two too late. This Warriors thing, I really believe that Durant thought it was going to be different after he won the first title. That he was going to win. All the OKC stuff was going to go away and people were never going to mention it again. They were never going to mention that he chased the title, any of that stuff. And just accept it for what it was, that he changed teams, he made the right move, and he won the title. And when that didn't happen, I think he really took it personally. And you could hear it on some of the podcasts we did together. And you could watch it and see it in some of the things he said. During the playoffs, after the playoffs, definitely had a chip on his shoulder about it. And I think what he realized was that even though he's winning in Golden State, he can't win because he can win 5 in a row and people are still going to say he chased the title. Now, whether he can eventually shrug that off and learn how to deal with it and just learn to accept the fact that this is the best basketball situation he's ever going to be in, he should stay. He should at least follow it to San Francisco next year. But I think that's part of it. I think the other part was after they won that first title, and if you watch the ring ceremony the next year, because it had clearly become Durant's team as a basketball team, and Golden State spent a lot of the next 2 years rebuilding that as Curry's team as well. And even like when they handed out the rings, Curry got his ring last, and it really felt like Curry's team. And I think from that moment on, Durant, kind of realized, this is always going to be Curry's team. And by the way, it is. If you go to the games, Curry is the most popular guy on the team. He's the most beloved player on the team. He might be the most beloved player in the league other than LeBron. And if Durant leaves, I think it will be because he will always wonder what it would have been like to have his own team. That would be my armchair analysis from not having talked to him in person now for 6-7 months. But it was him and Westbrook, and now he's on Curry's team with Draymond and all those guys. And if he leaves, it'll be because he wants his own team. It's the same reason Kyrie left Cleveland. He wanted his own thing. He wanted to go to his team and have the ownership of that team and be the guy in that team. Now, I think the Clippers are more realistic than the Knicks if he leaves, but we'll see. But the cool thing about this story, for if you're a Warriors fan and if you love NBA history, is I actually think history would say that this is actually going to bring them closer. The more I look at this, the more I think about this. I watched Draymond's little thing, his 2-minute soliloquy that he gave at practice today. And it does feel like this could end up being healthy. I still don't know what Draymond said, and maybe it'll come out 5 months from now, but he might have crossed the line. Steve Kerr was there. If he said something super personal, you can make believe it's good, you can whatever, but sometimes you don't come back from that. So that would be my question is, how far did he go with whatever he said? I guess we'll find out someday. Maybe when Phil Jackson writes a book about that season. Hey, let's do football picks really quick. I went 1-1 last week. I'm 4-2 since we brought back the picks and rebooted them. I am up $1.8 million. I'm up $1.8 million, Kyle.
That's incredible.
Betting $1 million a game. Can you believe that?
That's just incredible.
How am I going to spend all this money?
I'm so proud.
So 3 games. I like 2 straight up games and a teaser. First one, Saints are 8.5 against Philly in New Orleans. All due respect to this Philly team. They won the Super Bowl. This happens. You're not the first team this happened to. You won't be the last. The dreaded year after. Ronald Darby going down, I thought was the death knell for this team. They are now at the point of no return with injuries, with the hole that they've dug for themselves. I just don't see it. I think it's a mediocre talent team at this point. For all the teams trying to make the playoffs. If you're just comparing them to the top 18 or whatever, they are not one of the top 10. And I think this is going to get worse, not better for them. And I also, as you've heard me saying this for a couple of weeks now, I think the Saints are just great. They would be my number 1 pick right now to win the Super Bowl. That could change in 2 weeks, but they're only given 8.5 at home. It's really starting to feel like Drew Brees' year. I would like to tease them with Pittsburgh, who we talked about this game with Cousin Sal on Sunday night. Pittsburgh laying 6 in Jacksonville. Feels like a trap game to some degree, right? Pittsburgh looked awesome in their last game, which was Thursday night. Jacksonville looked terrible. You never want to have the team that looked awesome going against the team that looked terrible. I think the problem is something's broken in Jacksonville. Their defense just isn't good anymore. I don't know what happened. The way it's been explained to me from third parties is that when you have a defense that's overachieving like that and doing great and kicking ass, and they come so close to making the Super Bowl and they fall short, it's really hard to get that edge back. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they just overachieved last year and now they are what they are. I think they lost faith in Bortles. I don't think they really have any chance of winning that division anymore. They're 3-6. They would need a lot of things to go right, and they would probably need 9-7 could be the best possible record for them to win the division. I don't see it. But more importantly, this is a revenge game for Pittsburgh because Jacksonville has kind of handled their business the last couple of years. I think this Pittsburgh's team the last 5 weeks has been excellent. I think this Le'Veon Bell thing pissed them off. I think weirdly they rallied around it. I like the way Roethlisberger's playing. I like the way they can move the ball. And I thought about just betting this straight up -6, but the safe bet is to tease them with the Saints. You bring the Steelers down to even. You bring the Saints down to 2.5. I'm putting $1 million on this. $1 million. So that's my first one. Second one, Chicago is laying 2.5 at home against the Minnesota Vikings. There are a few things I like about this one. One is that Trubisky has actually played. Kyle, you might have to edit this out if he sucks this weekend.
All right.
Trubisky's been pretty good. They've kind of figured out how to get by with him.
Yeah.
All right. Tariq Cohen, I think he's due for a breakout game. In general, I just feel like the Bears are due for a kick-ass game. I like their D. Khalil Mack's healthy again. That Vikes offensive line is awful. Adam Thielen is juggling 2 different injuries right now. I know this because he's on both of my fantasy teams. And I went to one of the websites and just red flags all over the place. Red flags were like coming out of my computer and assaulting me. And they're like, he might play, could play. If you watch the Vikings, you know he is the key player on that team. Even if the Vikes keep it close, and even if there's a chance for them to win late, in Chicago, outdoors, great defense, or I should say a very good defense. We don't know if they're great yet. Has all the makings of the Vikings driving down for the game-tying field goal and Kirk Cousins gets strip sacked. Because that's what he does. He gets strip sacked. I love getting the extra half point. I can't believe this line's 3. I'm just delighted by this. Bears by 2.5 at home. There's one other interesting thing here. Sal and I talked, I was like, we should have followed what the record of the teams that are about to play on Thanksgiving Day is the week before. Somebody at the Action Network was kind enough to actually run this data. Since 2015, teams went an impressive 14-4 straight up and 15-2-1 against the spread on the weekend before they suited up on Turkey Day. So that's a 3-year sample size. That's pretty good. The 12 years before that, not as good. 42-22 straight up. Only 27-33-4 against the spread. I bring this up because I was alarmed by the fact that this is a Sunday night game in Chicago. And then the Bears play on Thursday at 12:30 in Detroit on Thanksgiving. The NFL is the worst. Seriously. Goodell, whoever works for you, if you're listening to right now, you guys are the fucking worst. You're awful. You're just the worst. How do you do this? Why do we have bye weeks? We have bye weeks so that you can set up a situation where the Bears are going to play Sunday night and then play on Thursday at 12:30. Fucking ridiculous. You're really the worst. You are the worst. You do not care about your players. You don't. Why do you pretend you care? Why have the blue tent? Why have the concussion spotters? You don't fucking care. You don't. Stop it. Anyway, I still like the Bears despite all of that. And the NFL is the worst. Don't ever forget this. The blood is on all of our hands. This is the worst fucking league. How do they allow this? Anyway, go Bears, -2.5. I have $1 million on that one. Here's the third one. So they moved that Chiefs-Rams game to Los Angeles on Monday night because apparently the Mexico City field was unplayable, uninhabitable.
What? Really?
Something bad was with the field?
Huh. I could not imagine.
You're surprised to hear this,
I'm
Steffi?
so surprised.
You know that it's bad when the NFL says to itself, wow, this might actually be bad for the players. The same league that has somebody playing on a Sunday night and then 80 hours later. So they moved this to LA. You would think this would be great for the Rams. Wow. I think there's going to be a lot of Chiefs fans there. We saw in the Chargers game, there was 25,000 Chiefs fans, it seemed like, out of 30,000 people. You basically have the Coliseum at night. Feels like a track meet. I don't love the way the Rams are playing. I think their offense is lights out. I think they can score against anybody. You can run on them. You can move the ball wherever. They can't close big leads. So even if they're up 10, with 4 minutes left, they could still give up the garbage time touchdown. Lombardi pointed this out on GM Street this week. They run it up on offense because they don't trust their defense. So they'll be up 38-27 with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they're trying to score a touchdown. They're acting like it's second quarter because they don't want the other team to get the ball back down 11 because they know they can't stop them. I was stunned by how Seattle was able to run the ball down their throats, and I just don't think they're good enough defensively right now. So that extra half point weirdly it becomes important. I think the Chiefs can win this outright. I'm not sure if they will, but I think they can. The Cooper Kupp thing is interesting. Josh Reynolds is the backup. He comes in because the Rams, they play the Madden offense. They play the one running back with the three receivers and the tight end, and they don't really mix it up from that formation. But when you play Madden and they have the 100 different variations off the one formation, that's basically what they do. I like Josh Reynolds. I actually picked him up in fantasy a couple weeks ago because I felt like he had a chance, if one of those three guys got hurt, he had a chance to just go in and get the job done. So I don't know if they're going to miss Cooper Kupp as much as it feels like, because I do like Reynolds. But, they only have the three receivers. If this turns into a track meet, they might wear down in the fourth quarter. Who knows? I don't know what to expect, but I do expect a close game. I do think the Chiefs are good. I do think either team could win this game. And, there's one other thing that's at stake here. Just mark this down. MVP odds right now. Mahomes is even. Drew Brees is plus 175. If the Chiefs lose this game, I think, and the Saints beat, they win their game against the Eagles convincingly, or they just win it, I think Brees becomes the favorite. So I'd kind of recommend the Brees plus 175 unless you think the Chiefs can win this game. Because if the Chiefs lose this game, I think Brees becomes the MVP favorite. So mark that one down for you. In the meantime, I'm betting $1 million on the Kansas City Chiefs plus 3.5 in LA, which gives me these three picks. Bears minus 2.5. Chiefs plus 3.5. And New Orleans minus 8.5, teased, 6-point tease with Pittsburgh minus 6 and the NFL being the fucking worst. You guys are terrible. I can't believe you did this to the Bears. You should be ashamed of yourself. We're going to take a quick break. Coming up, Conan O'Brien. Let's face it, guys are terrible at taking care of their health. Studies show that 70% of guys who experience erectile dysfunction don't get treated for it. That's bad. The thing most people don't realize is that ED is like a check engine light for a man's body. It could be an indicator that there's something more serious going on, like a heart issue or diabetes. Thankfully, our sponsor, Roman, has created an easy, discreet way to get checked out by a doctor and get treated for ED online. It's a one-stop shop. Licensed U.S. physicians can diagnose your ED, then ship meds right from their pharmacy to your door. With Roman, you don't have to wait in waiting rooms, deal with any awkward face-to-face conversations, or make any uncomfortable trips to the pharmacy. Just go to getroman.com/bill. Fill out a brief questionnaire, chat with the doctor. Get FDA-approved medication. For real. It's recommended by your doctor. It's all prescribed online. It's delivered straight to your door. Discreet, unmarked packaging. Hey, go talk to the doctor. Erectile dysfunction is a problem that guys don't tackle, but it's really important. And now with Roman, it's easy to take care of. For a free online visit, go to getroman.com/bill. All right, it's not often we get to welcome somebody into the podcasting ranks. Conan O'Brien, you're doing it.
I'm doing it.
You have your own podcast.
I have my own podcast. I determined, first of all, I may have had some false information. I was told there were very few podcasts out there.
Yeah.
And that I was getting it on the ground floor. And so...
It's like it's definitely not the ground floor, but we need you in the podcast
I was
world.
also told it was a cash cow, that it's just going to throw off a
That
ton
might be
of,
true for you.
I don't think so. It's a labor of love. It was something. It's actually had this concept for a little while ago, which is I had a Christmas party, and I realized everyone at this Christmas party, 99% of them, and this has been true every year, are people that work for me. I employ them, and I really do like the people I work with, and I'm friendly with them. And I thought, I got to make some friends.
You're in your own work bubble.
And yeah, I got to make some friends. And I know a lot of people. I know a lot of celebrities, and I like them, but there's never any time. I don't spend much time making friends with them. So this is a quest. I thought, I'll do a podcast, and I'll get them in there and just pretty much put them on the spot and say, why did it never happen with us? We get along. We're friendly. What's going on? And it's great. It's funny. I really enjoy it. And we end up talking about a lot of funny stuff, but also some of them are really brutally honest. They're like, no, it's just, it's not going to happen, and also you seem a little tightly wound, Conan, and it's good. I like that part of it. But in there is mixed a lot of great anecdotes. And I do like interviewing people, and I like this format. I like being able to talk and not in 6-minute increments and then have to throw it a commercial. Do you know what I mean?
That format is so frustrating in so many ways, because it's how much prep do you do when you have the guest on? Like, do you know they're going to hit certain stories? Because it seems like the stuff that especially breaks out from your show is when the guest has surprised you and gone on some crazy direction.
Yeah, I learned a long time ago. I grew up watching Johnny Carson, and it dawned on me that the stuff that always made it into the anniversary shows, this is back when, in the olden days, when late night shows would celebrate.
I fucking love the anniversary
shows. And Carson would wear a tuxedo, and his sidekick, Ed McMahon, would wear a tuxedo, and they would show these clips. All of the clips were mistakes.
Yeah.
They were all mistakes. It was never, remember that amazing sketch that we wrote. Greatness, I think, in late night, when anyone achieves it on any late night show, is something gone wrong and the host exploiting it. So I like to have probably sort of like a good quarterback has a plan.
Yeah.
You have a plan, and then you ditch it the minute the holes aren't where they're supposed to be, and you go another way. That's what I think a host should do.
But your favorite guests are always like the Bill Burr, Norm Macdonald. This might go off the rails really fast. Type of guys.
Yeah. Norm Macdonald, one of the great talk show guests of all time. He invented something that, why is there a man doing his taxes in the corner in this podcast?
He's typing notes in case we have to do breakouts.
It's incredible. He's it's very loud. He's audibly clicking away. And I really did think
he's typing excitedly.
You have a guy in the corner doing the books on the podcast while you're doing the podcast. No, Norm Macdonald invented this amazing thing that I've never seen anybody do before or since. It's kind of like he split the atom. It was that revolutionary. Norm would come on, and he would, instead of telling you a real story, like if I had you on the show and you're like, hey, Bill, tell me, well, and remember I was living in Chestnut Hill once, and you would tell a real story about what happened to you in your life. Norm tells old jokes as stories that happened to him.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, Norm, what are you up to? And I mean, really old jokes from like the 1920s. And he'd be like, well, Conan, I don't know if you're aware that I purchased a farm, Conan. I'd be like, really? You purchased? Yeah. I purchased a farm. Of course, I have 3 daughters. And I'm like, you have 3 daughters? Yeah, I have 3 daughters on the farm. One very attractive, one not as attractive, and of course the third not, kind of. Well, she's ugly, Conan. She's ugly. And I'd be like, Well, one day, this traveling salesman comes to the farm, and he says, now, Norm, I tell you. And then it's like he's telling an old traveling salesman joke.
Yeah.
But
about halfway through where it's going.
I usually know. I know kind of what he's doing. I'm laughing that he has the balls to do this. I'm laughing at the audacity. So I don't even care if this joke lands or not. I'm laughing that he's committing to the fact that, no, he doesn't have a farm. He doesn't have 3 daughters. There's no traveling salesman. But he doesn't care in a way that is exhilarating and scary at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And plus, he probably has some people in the audience who are taking completely seriously, right?
Yes. Yeah. He's got some people thinking.
We call them tourists.
Yes, we call them. They're usually from San Bernardino.
Well, Norm had the greatest talk show moment in the history of talk shows with Courtney Thorne-Smith.
That was epic. That was so great. And it's funny because
it's lived on. Who knew that we were going to have YouTube eventually?
You know
where
what?
We could just queue it up on command.
God bless YouTube. I had no idea when those things were happening. I thought, we're talking 1993, 94. When those things were happening, I thought, what did I know? I just thought if you were up and you saw it, that means you saw You saw an amazing thing happen. And if you, and then maybe if I get to stay on the air long enough, we'll have a 1-year anniversary show and maybe you'll see it then. But if you're not there for that, it's gone. And now I meet people, that around the world that will say, oh, I just saw that thing with you and Norm and Courtney Thorne-Smith. And I'll think, that was a moment of my life when I was 30.
Yeah.
And I'm like 85 now. Like, how is that possible?
You had the funny thing about those first few years is it was such a great time for music.
Yeah.
And you and Arsenio just had this murderer's row of
I love any sentence that starts with
I know,
you and Arsenio.
Well, Arsenio was having all the hip hop bands and all the rappers from that were really that first wave. And then you were tapping into this whole alternative scene that was like taken off.
It was so fun because
some of that stuff's online still.
Yeah. The tricky thing about that stuff is music is the hardest thing. You
buried it at the end of the show.
Well, no, but also it's hard to clear in perpetuity for legal reasons.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Any guest that came on my show, we can show that for the rest of time. If a band comes on and plays a song, you can't clear it in perpetuity on the internet for legal reasons. So I'm really jazzed because we're doing, in January, we're going to come out with what I think will be the state-of-the-art website of all my stuff going back all through the NBC years, starting in 93.
With the music?
Not the music. Oh. The music we can't do, but all of the comedy bits, the interviews, and we're digitizing it so it's going to look amazing. And then you can, if you thought you saw something happen on my show in 1997, but you think maybe I was high, maybe that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Maybe Abe Vigoda got shot, or maybe he didn't. Right. I don't remember. It was late in the show, and then there was some bumblebees. I don't remember. You can type it in, and you will see that moment. That I'm really thrilled about. But the music, my first show was with music was September 14th, 93, and they said, "Who do you want?" And I said, "Radiohead." And this was in 93.
Yeah, that was a ballsy call.
And I said, point. "Radiohead. I want Radiohead to do Creep." Bang! Radiohead did Creep on the show. And I remember from that moment on, we could have, it was just amazing. We could have anybody we wanted. I love music. And suddenly it was a pretty incredible feeling to get to see all these people. And some of them were, Gwen Stefani came on with No Doubt when that first record came out. All these sort of iconic albums.
Yeah.
And they would come on, and I look at those clips now, and then I come over. I look like a 14-year-old Belgian girl. I'm always like coming over like, "Hey, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Well, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back." And they're always looking like, "Well, you're not going to last." But it was fun. It was a blast.
Yeah. Obviously, I've been watching talk shows since I was a kid. Like you, we're around the same age, like the Mike Douglas shows and Carson and all the different incarnations. And then when Letterman showed up, and he would do his anniversary show, but he was making fun of Carson's anniversary show, but like Carson never realized it.
Yep.
The whole show was set up to make fun of the Carson show, but he idolized Carson.
Yes.
Somehow threw Carson off the scent of, I'm actually making fun of this format.
I think Carson, I'm going to say, Johnny was really aware and very smart. I think it's possible Johnny knew, but Johnny was so secure
Oh, it's in the early 80s,
he was
definitely.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, but I think also with because that was his show. You know,
Right.
it was a Carson production, and he knew that Dave revered him. So I think Johnny would have been fine with him making fun of the form a little bit, and he so revolutionized it. Dave,
Were you a giant Letterman guy?
Oh yeah,
at that time, because I remember when Letterman came to LA and Carson came on the show. That was like one of the biggest moments of my life.
Yeah,
I was like, this is vindication. Carson's coming on.
Yeah. That shouldn't be one of the biggest moments of your life.
Well, I mean, when I was a teenager.
I'm still.
There weren't a lot of girls.
Okay. You're saying too much now. You should keep this
I'm
to yourself.
oversharing.
Yeah. Just make it. It was a really fun moment for me. Just rewrite that.
I remember being marginally excited about it.
Good. There you go.
Yeah.
Very good.
I was like, this is kind of cool.
Yes, I was really influenced by, I was very inspired by Dave because it was such a revolution at the time. You hadn't seen someone be funny that way.
Yeah.
And, his tone was so original and spot on. I remembered watching the morning show. My sister, I was leaving for school. I was in high school and I was late to go to school. And I was going out the front door, and it was like the spring or something. And I remembered my sister Kate shouting, "Get back here! You got to see this!" And so I went back in the house thinking, "This better be like, what is she talking about?" And she was watching his morning show, and I wrote an article about it for, I think it was Entertainment Weekly when Dave retired, that I called "Suddenly Everything Was Wrong," because everything was wrong. He didn't look like a host.
Yeah,
the set was wrong. It was not polished. The energy was wrong, and it was great. It's the true revolutionary comedy should look wrong when you first see it.
Yeah,
in anything or art, it should look wrong. I think that's how. And so the next couple of years, I watched him through college, and then desperately wanted to work for him.
Did you ever write into Viewer Mail?
I didn't write into Viewer Mail. Did you?
I did. I was in high school and I really wanted to make it. It might even been like 8th, 9th grade initially, but never made it.
Yeah.
Always was waiting on those Thursday nights.
Could still happen on his new Netflix show.
Does he do Viewer Mail on the Netflix show? If he does, I'm going to mail.
It'd be hilarious if he did. If he went back to stuff from '83 and was doing it while Obama's sitting out there, that'd be hilarious.
Well, you were saying earlier about how stuff would be on and then just disappear. That was what I used to tape the Letterman shows on VHS, but if you missed one or if the tape didn't work, that was it. It was just gone. There's no record of it. And now there's record of everything. Every moment somebody has, there's videotape of it.
Yeah. We sound like we
sound like really old.
We sound like old guys.
Yeah.
We have a little sterno going. We're cooking some beans. We're in the woods talking about those olden times. We're both, Bill and I are whittling right now.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, there was a time when on television, but it's very hard to explain to, my assistant Sona, who came with me today. She doesn't own a TV. She watches everything online and everything's immediately accessible. And I've had this, I can pull out my phone and access any moment in TV history.
Right.
I remember the first time I went to the Museum of Broadcasting in New York. I was, like 25. I think I was a writer on Saturday Night Live, and I heard about the Museum of Broadcasting, and I went over there, and I requested. There was like an old woman there, and I said, I would like to see Jerry Lewis's monologue from his first late night show was this epic disaster from September 14th, 1962. And she was like, you wait here. And then she went away, and then she came back a long time later, and it was like Hogwarts. There's an owl and magicians are there, and she hands it to me, and I put it into a machine, and I put on the headset, and I watch. Literally, 8 years later?
Yeah.
Just type in. You can be anywhere in the world.
It's
just
probably
type in
online right now.
Oh no,
Jerry
I've watched
Lewis
it.
had a late night show?
He had a late night show that was a huge thing at the time. It was he was the biggest star, and They paid him a fortune to do a late night show because he had guested on Carson, I think, and just destroyed. He'd done really well. So they gave him his own show, and it was once a week, and it was something crazy like 2 hours, a 2-hour long show. And apparently the legend is, I've read a lot about this, that Jerry did no preparation. They built a massive studio for him. They did incredible amount of, he had a desk that you could direct the show from. Everybody turned out for it. All these celebrities were in the crowd. It was huge. He had a giant, like 35-piece orchestra. Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry Lewis. And he comes out, and you can tell within 30 seconds, he's got nothing. And all of America tuned in because this was supposed to be a big thing. And Jerry starts saying, well, it's good to be here. And, okay, wait, the show's going to be 2 hours long. And, some people wonder, how do you fill a 2-hour show? Well, we will. We'll figure it out. I mean, and then he's talking about almost instantly about how, and I'm sick of people thinking maybe we can't pull this off because I think we can. You're like, not one joke? Nothing? And then you can see he's kind of sweating.
Oh,
and then you're like, oh my God.
This guy hosted a telethon every year for like 100 years.
Yeah,
He didn't know how to do a 2-hour show?
It was a huge, it was one of those shows where, like after the first episode, it was just, everybody was talking about what the hell happened.
You weren't meant to do this?
And I had heard about it, and I just wanted to go see it. But yeah, it was...
I remember when I moved out here, I went to the one in LA, the Museum of Broadcasting. It was the same thing. It was like, can I call up the Mike Douglas show? What was the famous fight with Richard Pryor and Milton Berle?
Oh.
And you tell when they started getting into it. Now it's on YouTube. You can just watch it. But
Right.
I really want to see that because I'd always heard about it. And you put in the little request. And they
there's these great things. I think there was one where Muhammad Ali and Sly Stone are together on, I think it's on Mike Douglas. And Sly Stone is kind of high and being goofy, and Muhammad Ali is pissed. Muhammad Ali is trying to make real points about, equality and the dignity of, African-American race. And Sly just keeps being goofy. And Muhammad Ali is just really, it's fun to see. Things are so sanitized now. It's fun to see real anger and rage on TV.
I remember the first year when we were doing Kimmel Show, the Mike Douglas show was a big influence on, you wanted like the kind of the chaos that could happen when you're just putting different people on the couch.
Right.
And it can happen sometimes, but then there are other times where not only does it not happen, it's just really awkward. And there's a reason. What you learn when you do late night shows is there's a reason we should do, and there's a reason nobody's doing that idea.
Right.
Because people have tried it and the variations of it just,
it's one of the things that I always feel like people can learn the wrong lessons from a success sometimes. That happens a lot. I was always a fan of surrealism in comedy and is this real? Is this not real? What's going on? Adding a little bit of that sort of SCTV.
The Fugitive guy was one of my favorites for that.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. And adding that element. But when you add surrealism, sometimes there are people who are fans of that think, I get it. It should just be weird all the time. You think, well, no, there's good weird.
Yeah.
And then there's unproductive, bad weird that goes nowhere. But, sometimes you see people take that school of comedy and say, oh, I get it. They'll learn the wrong lesson from early Letterman, or I've had people that liked my stuff that I was doing, and then they said, yeah, I get it. There just doesn't have to be a joke. It can just be weird. And I'll think, no, you learn the wrong lesson. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think there's still something to something just being really funny, which I think we forget sometimes. Like, obviously I know you have a long history with Smigel.
Yep.
Triumph still makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And he's been doing it now for almost 25 years?
No, well, it's
20
later
years?
now. Let's see. The show, my late night show started 25 years ago, and I want to say Triumph doesn't enter the picture till maybe 6 or 7 years in. But
so the mid-late 90s? So he's 20 years of Triumph. How is that dog still alive?
Well, it's made of rubber, so
it's got a hand
it doesn't
in its
age.
ass.
You know, it's one of the reasons when people always ask me how is The Simpsons still on, and I'm like, it's simple. The characters can't
everything.
age. You know, Triumph will, as long as you occasionally lubricate the puppet.
Did
with
you
Lindsay
overlap
oil.
with Farley? You did, right?
At SNL?
Yeah.
At SNL, I did. Yeah.
Because they always said he was one of those, like in a room, was just funny all the time.
Well, he
you just couldn't
was-
get enough of it.
Farley was exactly what you would think you would want him to be. Meaning,
Yeah.
you meet some people in comedy who you think they're going to be their persona, and then you meet them and they're very serious and kind of shy, and you're a little disappointed.
Right.
And then you meet other people occasionally that completely fulfill your fantasy of who they would be.
Yeah.
And Chris Farley was like that. John Candy was like that. They were exactly who you wanted them to be. And the first time I met Farley, I was a writer on Saturday Night Live, and he came in. He was waiting to have his interview with Lorne. And so he wasn't even on the cast yet. He was just waiting to have his interview. And Lorne famously keeps people waiting.
Yeah.
So Farley was there, I'm not kidding, I think for 2 days.
Oh, no.
There's an office on the 9th floor that Lorne has right above the studio.
Yeah.
And so the second half of the week, when you're working on sketches and stuff, it's you know, Lorne is there, and he's in his office with the door shut, and he's on the phone talking to Mick Jagger or talking to Paul Simon, or you know, Lorne's talking to those people, and whoever's has to wait for him just has to wait.
Yeah.
And so Farley was just waiting, and I remembered saying, feeling kind of bad for him, and I said, I think I had met him before through Odenkirk at Second City, so I said, "Hey, Chris, I'll show you around." And Chris was like, "Oh, okay, good." You know, he's doing that guy. Yeah, oh yeah, you know, super humble Midwestern guy, and bowing a lot and giggling and and then I took him out and I started doing a fake tour, just through the studio. And I was like, "See those cables over there? We call those cables, you know, and they're held by that cable guy right there. There's old Joe." I mean, I was giving people the wrong name.
Yeah.
"See that guy carrying that board? Well, you'll learn more about." And Farley was cackling, and we were just fucking around. And he got on the show. Obviously, he was hired instantly once he finally got in to see Lorne. And then I think the Chippendales thing that I think Downey wrote for him. Once he did that, which was pretty early, it took
was
off
over.
from there. Yeah.
What was your first year at SNL?
80. I started at the very beginning. I got hired in late 87, so it was right at the beginning of.
So it was right when the show was really coming back.
I timed that one. I mean, I'm not saying I timed it. I'm making a joke. I really got lucky. I showed up at SNL. I remembered at the time.
You came from not necessarily the news?
Came from not necessarily the news.
Good
and
show.
Then I had a rule. My writing partner, Greg Daniels, who's gone on to create.
Yeah,
like,
he hasn't really done much. So.
Yeah, exactly. Poor guy. I'm going to pass the hat for him later. Yeah, he drives 2 Bugattis that are tied together with electrical tape. You've never met a more frugal guy you'd have no idea. But he, I used to have a rule with him when we were writing partners. I was like, we will not write for a sitcom.
Yeah.
I was very strict. And
You had high standards.
I did. I had high standards, and I've literally said, we will starve before we will do this, or this. We're not going to, you know. And then I had this rule, which was pretty at the time. If you think about it now, there's so many funny shows. There's a million funny different kinds of shows.
That was not the case 25 years ago.
No. And I just said, we can work on not necessarily the news because that's a good place for us to get started. After that, our first choice is Letterman, and our second choice is Saturday Night Live. And Greg was like, "Okay, what else?" And I went, "That's it." So this is a story that people would probably hate, but we got a gig at Saturday Night Live. I went out there. It was not my first choice. I remember thinking, well, that's kind of past its prime.
So SNL had Eddie had left. Then they had that weird transition year.
Had that
Downey
weird
Jr.
transition year, and then it had a year.
Then he blows up the cast and gets the Phil Hartman, Dana Carvey cast.
And then I come in. I step into that just as it's starting to pick up steam. And
you have 2 of the greatest cast members in the history of the show.
Well, Phil Hartman, best utility player in the history of comedy.
He has to be on the all-time cast.
Yeah, he has to be
If
because
it's 7, 9, whatever, he still has to be in there somewhere.
Yeah. Just him and Pete Davidson. I just threw that out there. I don't know the guy. But anyway, Phil Hartman, when you think about it, Phil Hartman could play convincingly a father who's meeting his daughter's date for the first time.
Right.
A square father. He could play a convict. He could play a juvenile delinquent.
Game show host.
He could be Frankenstein.
Could be a 1920s actor.
He can be anything. And we used to call him
caveman.
He used to call himself Mr. Potato Head because you could just take the pieces off and put in new pieces.
Yeah.
Him, Dana Carvey, On Fire, John Lovitz, and then I got to give it up for.
And then the women were really good.
Absolutely amazing, and they were comedians like Jan Hooks, one of the best, I think, cast members of all time. Nora Dunn. I mean, just the fact that these, and then while I'm there, the people that showed up while I was there. Farley shows up while I'm there.
Mike Myers
shows up. I remember the first day he came in and he had a leather jacket with the Canadian flag on the back. And he was super.
Is that true?
Yeah, super.
A leather jacket with a Canadian flag on the back?
Yeah. It's really opposites when you think about it. It's a badass jacket with the Canadian flag that says, "Please, I don't want to offend you. I'm here in your bar. I just pulled up on my motorcycle and I really don't want to offend anybody." And then Sandler shows up.
Yeah.
When I'm there, and Spade and Rock, and everyone's roaming around the halls. They're all kids.
Did you fit in with those guys, or were you like the Harvard guy?
No, it was actually kind of nice because I didn't feel like I hung out with. I worked with Smigel, Odenkirk, Greg, and I were like a unit. Tom Hanks used to call us the Boiler Room Boys.
Yeah,
because we were just these guys that were always awake. We never went to sleep. We never changed we dressed like we were still wearing the clothes that we wore in college. Which is not good, by the way. And we would stay up and just write really weird stuff and roam the halls, and we were always available. And so
that was probably the best 3 or 4 year stretch for weird, quirky, couldn't be repeated SNL sketches.
And those were my favorite.
Yeah. Because now they love to do the same one the 21st time. That was like, it was on one time, that was it.
Yeah, that was my favorite sketches to write were usually in the, I would say 12:40.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. Later on, I get a late night show, and it's at 12:35 on NBC.
And that was your wheelhouse time.
My wheelhouse is people are sleepy, and my favorite sketches that I ever worked on are, wait a minute, did I just see that, or was I kind of half asleep? That was weird.
Seth Meyers called those the 10 of 1 sketches.
Yeah.
Where I think the first Barry Gibb show was like they just threw it on at 12:50.
Yeah.
That's like kind of when you throw those in.
And you kind of want, that's where weird stuff can grow. If you think about it, you can grow really weird mushrooms if the temperature's just right and there's not too much light. There's not too much light. There's not too much heat. I mean, when the show used to begin, you have to have the big sketch, and you look at the show now and it's what's their take on Trump this week and Mueller, and what's their take on Kavanaugh, and who's the big star they've flown in from LA to, and there's a lot of heat there, and it's not always conducive to like the most fun comedy.
Yeah.
And then if you look at a little later on, there's less pressure. And you got a weird sketch, and it's not really about anything, but I'm
trying to think some of those.
Like Jack Handy, for example, is one of my all-time favorite SNL writers, and he wrote Toonces the Cat, but he also wrote he'd have these great, all of us couldn't wait to hear his sketches read through, because, he'd have such great ideas, like James Bond getting captured by the villain who has a giant lair in the volcano, but the lair isn't finished yet. And he's like, "Mr. Bond, I didn't think you'd be here for 6 months. Sorry, Blofeld, but, and he's like, "Well, anyway, over there is going to be it's going to be a Shark Tank where I would lower you into a Shark Tank. It's not there yet, right. But imagine, and it was, I'm one of the workmen in the background on that sketch.
Yeah, you were in a couple ones.
Yeah, they used to throw me out there. I made Jim Downey laugh, and he used to throw me into stuff every now and then. And it was not, I didn't think I should be a Saturday Night Live cast member. That was not something that I aspired to be. I didn't think I was a Dana Carvey or a Mike Myers. I wasn't that. I knew what I wasn't.
Yeah.
But I knew I could make people laugh, but had to be in my persona. Do you know what I mean? It couldn't.
Did you latch onto a star? Because sometimes the writers latch onto the one star and they write a lot of stuff. Or was it more democratic back then?
I don't think we did that. I don't think I did that. I mean, there's obviously people, you'd obviously plug Phil into everything. I don't think I latched on. I remembered I worked on a Sprockets once that worked out well with Mike Myers. I had an idea for one, and I went to him, and so there were individual people that I would think, wait, I think I got something for you. I would say that 80% of what I wrote was not cast dependent. It was just a weird idea that I thought, okay, it wasn't like, oh, this cast member has to do this.
It was a really fun time, also, like, because it was all these kids that grew up watching the same shows in the 70s and 80s. So SNL would have like the Partridge Family joke or the Brady Bunch joke or whatever.
Or the TJ Hooker joke.
Yeah, it was like, oh, I get that. Oh, now everything's so splintered. I think it would be harder to have.
Here's a weird, yes, when you look at, that's actually
because I promise you and I watched 80% of the same shows.
Yes.
And we were probably like 9. And
yes.
I don't think 9-year-olds could say that now.
No, you can't say that now. They can. The one thing that's unifying the most young people now is probably video games, meaning Fortnite. Fortnite. If you're talking to a bunch of, I have a 13-year-old son, and he would, if he and all of his friends were together, I think I could reference The Simpsons and Fortnite, and they would know what I'm talking about. After that, it's a crapshoot. And what's really interesting is if you think about the way we grew up, there's certain reference points, Starsky and Hutch, or like you said, any of those shows from 70s, 60s, 70s, we can reference that and everyone knows the reference. Today, you can be in a room with a bunch of people who are your demographic. Even some of them went to school with you. They're your friends, and you're talking about what's on TV today. You'll each list 15 different shows, and there will be maybe one overlap between two of you. Do you know what I mean?
The Office has gotten to that point to some degree with the under 30 people.
Yes. Well, now it's being rewatched.
The Netflix.
Yes.
Netflix has done it with that and with Friends.
And more with Parks and Rec, too.
Parks and Rec. I think The Good Place is starting to head that way, too. But it seems like they're all rewatching because those 22-minute comedies are so easy to you bang out a season in like 4 hours.
Also,
6 hours.
I think what's really smart is stuff without a laugh track, stuff that's not shot before a studio audience. Something happened culturally, and might be reality television because, but people like things that have that documentary look and feel.
Yep.
And so when you look at a sitcom now where someone makes an entrance and there's applause or there's laughter, and then they leave, it immediately feels fake and hokey. And I think there's a whole generation that looks at that and thinks, what the fuck is this?
I felt like Shandling was the first one who kind of flipped that when he did his Showtime show.
Yeah.
He would have the fake applause for everybody that walked in. And it was the first time I was like, oh, he's making fun of.
Yes.
Because, you watch those old Good Times episodes now or said like they'll be on some random channel. And the audience was so involved in the show.
Yeah, and you also watch things like Happy Days from
Happy Days
1978 or 1979. Fonzie makes an entrance. First of all, Happy Days
wild applause.
Happy Days is interesting because the first season is single camera and actually kind of cool, and there's no studio wanting.
It looks like American Graffiti.
Yeah,
almost.
and it's actually very good. Then it switches. Happy Days switches to, I think in the second season, it switches to it's shot before a live audience. People make an entrance and the crowd goes crazy and they have to wait. So Fonzie comes in and he's mad because he just found out someone stole his motorcycle, and he comes in and he's mad and everyone's like, woo! And you see Henry Winkler having to wait for like 5 minutes and still pretend to be mad while he's acknowledging, and you're like, this is weird. You look at it now and it feels fake.
I remember that happened to Seinfeld with Kramer for like a season.
Yeah.
Where every time he walked into Jerry's apartment, the crowd would applaud. I think they told the crowd not to applaud.
Yeah.
But he would do the same thing. He'd be like, Jerry! And then and he'd have to wait 3 seconds.
And then everyone has to just wait on their line.
Yeah, yes. I think you're right, though, about the single camera.
But that's why I think the Office...
It's like a reaction to it.
I think a show like The Office is going to... the reason it's so relevant to... I mean, my son and daughter have watched every single episode of The Office. Every single episode.
Yeah.
And that's their sense of humor. But when you think about it, that show, when it started on NBC, was a very different look and feel to everything that had been a juggernaut for NBC before that, which is Friends and, Frasier and,
the one set where most things happened.
I used to love the way people are forced to sit on sitcoms.
Like in the long line, that's not a circle?
Yes. Yeah. And I used to love on Murphy Brown. Murphy Brown was never my show. It was never my cup of tea necessarily. But on Murphy Brown, they would set up that these are the most powerful people in show business and journalism. Candace Bergen and that they're like 60 Minutes, and they know Henry Kissinger, and they also know Al Haig, and she just had lunch with Nelson Mandela, and then it's time for them to have lunch, and they all crowd around one half of a small circular table because they have to, because it's a sitcom, and you have to sit. Doesn't matter, no. Murphy Brown would be in her office, or she'd be in like a nice cafeteria, and everyone gets half a table. Cheat out, or we're not going to see you.
There was the flip side of that. There was a Netflix movie that had Lucy Liu and somebody else in it that, with these Netflix movies, like everyone ends up seeing them, but it was about setting up Taye Diggs and Lucy Liu, these two people that work together. But Lucy Liu ran like a sports and pop culture website that isn't much different than The Ringer. Yeah. But had this just amazing office, like this $100 million office. And she had an assistant, and I was like, whoa. Did they ever go visit anybody's office before they came up with this?
Well,
but I like when they do that.
To be fair, you have pretty much the same setup. I came in here, and it's just the amount of marble in your entryway is absolutely stunning.
A lot of big lemonade vat. Yeah. Hey, let's take a quick break. If you need a device that helps you get stuff done, but is also perfect when you want to catch up on some fun, I don't know, like streaming live sports or checking in on your fantasy team, check out the latest member of the Microsoft Surface family. It's the new Surface Pro 6. Just take the keyboard off and use it like a tablet, or snap it back on and use it like a laptop with up to 13 and a half hours of battery life and the new 8th gen Intel Core processor. It's everything you love about the Surface Pro now, even more powerful. Check it out, the new Surface Pro 6, the newest and latest member of the Microsoft Surface family. And since we're here, football season is heading toward the home stretch. If you have written off your fantasy team, I have some good news for you. Daily Fantasy. Oh, yeah. I'm excited to be playing on FanDuel this season. You get the excitement of researching and building your team each week, regardless of the outcome. It's never been more fun or easy to play. You can play in their Gridiron Pick'em contest, a free contest. All you have to do is pick winners, no spreads. 10K split amongst the top pickers, or you can play single entry, which is one of my favorites. I have a team this week that I almost want to give you the lineup because it's so gosh darn good, but I also want to win money, and I don't want you to just copy my lineup. So I'm not telling you, but maybe I'll tell you on Monday. Trust me, I've tried other DFS sites before. If you're not a fantasy expert, FanDuel, clearly the place to play. New users get a $5 bonus when they make the first deposit. Come play with me at FanDuel.com/BS. Back to Conan O'Brien. Greg Daniels.
Yeah.
When did you guys stop being partners?
We stopped. He was really interested in writing a different format. I think I liked, and I've always liked, the shorter format. I've always liked, sketches. I've always liked that short format, and the most realistic show. I mean, the only half-hour show I could really imagine writing for was The Simpsons. That was which, when you think about it, is so many jokes and so many same sort of energy, and then there's this 3-act structure, but it's very, as half hours go, it was the one that I could work on. But Greg always was interested in that other form, so he left Saturday Night Live. He wanted to go out to LA and live there, and he was in a serious relationship with his now wife, and so he wanted to leave and go to LA.
So she ruined things for you.
Yeah, she was the Yoko.
Yeah. I never knew that.
Yeah. No, but he wanted to go out there. It actually worked out. When you think about it, I mean,
I would say it worked out for both.
It worked out for both of us, and we're really good friends and talk to each other all the time and hang out. And it's nice. It's actually, I think when you're working with someone, there's an intensity to it that I think I can relax now in better with Greg, that we are not dependent on each other.
Yeah.
In those early years, it was really intense, and we were friends, but Is it
intense because of the financial implications or the career
we were both
implications?
ambitious guys. When you're ambitious and you think, are we going to make it? Is this going to work? I mean, there was, I put a lot of pressure on myself, but I was really worried about my career through most of the 80s and into the 90s. Always worried, like, am I going to make it? Is this really going to work? Am I going to be able to achieve this idea I have that's very vaguely formed in the back of my head of what I could do? And then once I hit the late night show in 93, that's just 2 years of sheer try to stay alive. And then I don't think people really believe in this vision that we collectively have. And I don't know. I think I'm starting to relax now.
Yeah.
I'm 55 years old. So, yeah.
Well, I think I watched it because I was there for Kimmel's first season where you're on, you don't know what the show is yet. You're basically just trying to survive day after day after day and hope you don't get canceled. But they also don't have anyone to replace you with.
Yep.
So at some point, everybody just kind of stares at each other and goes, all right, I guess, good luck. And then, but you're just getting reps. And then I could see it with him after about 9 months. I was like, oh, he's starting to get this now.
Yeah.
But how long did it take for you?
I think about a week ago it clicked, to be honest with you. I think, man, I don't think there was any one moment. I think I just started to notice that our audiences were getting better and better.
Like livelier,
but also I noticed that people were coming to the show because they had seen it and liked it.
Oh.
And that there were young people and I've always had really creative fans, and they're very good artists, and they made jackets for themselves that had stuff from our show on it.
Yeah.
And they were coming, and I remember that we started in September, and I think by the summer I noticed, wait, these crowds they're really getting hot, and they know me now, and they know my rhythm. And so I always thought the trick of these things, people always think that it's the host who figured out how to do the job. I think it's a two-way street. I think it's the host has to figure out how to be the best version of themselves, who they already are. But I think the audience then has to get used to their rhythm. And I have a very particular kind of thing I think is funny and a very particular sort of rhythm that doesn't look right to people right away in 93, but then started to look, I think people started to get it. And that was always when I showed up at a big school, like I went to public schools in Brookline, Mass, I was never the funny guy right away. I would show up, I got a weird name, I got the weird hair, I'm this tall, skinny guy, what's his deal? I'm kind of quiet. And it took time. And that was always the case with me. And I thought it was the same thing with getting on television. I'm new, I'm going to get picked on,
We found Letterman too.
Exactly. As I've always said many times, I would not have liked me had I not been me, because, I was mad at NBC about the Letterman thing. So then they get a complete unknown, and who is this guy? So I understood the hostility. I also knew this is my one chance.
Was there hostility though? I can't even remember at this point.
Jesus, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it felt like there was also, you had the Letterman versus Leno was starting at that point.
No, that was,
you didn't
that was
feel like
obviously,
you were buried a little bit on the side?
No, there was a period of intense, I
fuck
don't
this guy?
I don't want to go back. Yeah. Oh, fuck this guy. Oh, yeah. I mean, there was,
because there were more people. We had less channels back then. So the amount of people probably watching at 12:30 has to be 3 times as many as probably watching now, right?
No, more people watched me at 12:30 in 93 than watched the Super Bowl now. That's a true fact.
Seriously?
That's
No.
complete.
I would believe that.
Glad I had you there for a second. At the time I was watched by 65 million people a night.
Jesus.
But no, it was no, that was back in the days where it'd be like, only 4 million people watched us last night. It's just late night is melting ice flows. We'll all be standing on ice cubes soon. But
the cool thing is if you get through that, you get through anything.
Yeah, but there was a famous review in the Washington Post that more or less said if I died, it would be a good thing.
I remember that.
But then he later changed his mind, and which was very nice. Actually, he didn't have to do that. He wrote
it was one of the great what 80s in the history of journalism. It was Tom Shales, right?
Yeah. And it was really, he wrote this thing where he said, "Okay, I was wrong. I was really mad about Letterman, and this is and that was.
I think he was really mad about Letterman. Like that. Like this is somehow your fault.
Well, but I understood it, and I understand it today, and I understand that. There was hostility. Obviously, I felt it. I'm very thin-skinned, and I really thought, I walked around thinking everybody hates me for about a solid year and a half. And then that started to slowly
What was the
improve.
moment that you started to realize, other than that the audiences were changing?
I just,
because when you're doing that week after week, you're just in it.
Well,
it's like you're on like a hamster wheel.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I think the thing that saves you in that situation is you don't have time to get in your head.
Yeah.
It's like, you're on a baseball team. You've got to play so many games. And so you can commit 3 errors in one game and be booed off the field, but you're back there the next day.
Right, trying to go 3 for 4.
You just have to keep, it's the repetition. It's the cockpit time over and over and over again. And then at a certain point, that protects you in a way from, I didn't have time to read everything. I didn't have time to know that, I think Playboy magazine that year, that, like in their list of like stuff for the year said, worst decision ever, hiring Conan to replace David Letterman, like that idiot Conan, that was actually in a magazine. And I saw it and I thought, oh, there's a centerfold in here somewhere.
Is there nudity in this magazine too?
Yeah, that was the one issue with no nudity, because they wanted to focus more on how I sucked. But
I think the one thing that was good for you, like in retrospect, was, and I think Letterman had this too. Letterman, when his show was on those first couple of years, he had this whole new generation of people that were coming up, right?
Yeah.
So his staple guest row is Seinfeld and Leno and Michael Keaton and Tom Hanks. And he was tapping into this new generation.
Yeah.
And then you had a lot of the same thing because you had all the SNL people you worked with, but then you had this new generation of comics that were coming up, and you kind of had your people after
it's really
a while.
It is really fun that we quickly just, got these people. And I think it's,
you and Arsenio, I think, both of you guys.
Again, when you think Arsenio, you think Conan. We were really fortunate because you come up with your group and people that you share their style of comedy, and then you do all this. I was talking to Will Ferrell the other day, and we were just. I couldn't remember half the things he was bringing up. He was bringing up, you remember the time I came on your show and I had a gun and we kept it quiet for half the interview, but then I leaned forward and you could see that I had a gun, and then you and I had this whole thing worked out. And I was like, I don't remember.
Oh, God.
We did so much aggressively weird stuff. And it was just like-minded, and then we became, I remember there were people who only wanted to come on the show if they could pretend that they needed dialysis halfway through, and you'd be like, oh, can't I just talk to you? Like there's some people I just wanted to talk to.
Yeah.
No, man.
This would be better.
I've seen other people do this. And sometimes it was people who were, maybe comedy wasn't their forte. But they had seen other people do it. They're like, no, I want to pretend, I want to do a conceptual thing. Really, B. Arthur? I don't think you should do
B.
this.
Arthur.
I threw her under the bus.
She's coming in right now, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Her ghost.
Well, I remember what was it, 03, 04, it just seemed like you jumped a level with that show. And then it became where's he going? What's next for him?
Yeah.
All these networks are courting him and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it was fast, but it really wasn't fast because you had the show for 11
it's
years.
Fast to other people.
Yeah.
Do you have kids?
I do. I have a 13 and a 10.
Okay, so we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
I have a 13 and a 15, but similar situation. You notice when other people come to your house, they're like, oh my God, your kids.
Yeah, wow,
this is crazy.
They're huge.
That's not how you feel because you see them every day.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, what are you talking about? They're the same. And they're like, no, they're not, man. This is Tommy Chong visiting me, by the way. Hey, man. Hey, Dave. And so they come by and they're blown away, but you're there. So I'm there for every second. So nothing felt, I've had people say to me, wow, 25 years on the air. That must just seem like it just blew by. No, it fucking didn't.
Yeah.
Because I was there for every second of it, sweating it. So no, it feels like 75 years.
It's like 130 years.
Yeah, it feels like, and
how's your life different if you go to Fox in 04?
No.
Are we sure a late night show could have worked on Fox?
I was not, that was, that was a big serious offer to go to Fox. And I thought about it really seriously. And I swear to God, the biggest reason I wanted to stay was it really haunted me the way Dave left NBC. And I wanted to be connected to my work. I didn't want to be separated from my work. I was really...
Oh, like your 11 years of library stuff?
Yes, exactly. I wanted to be connected and I didn't want to leave NBC. And so I remember thinking, I'll just stay. I don't know.
How much was the Tonight Show part of that? Just like
at that time, not.
The lure of
it?
At
that time, I didn't think that was a possibility because that was not, that was kind of floated as a possibility. But I remember thinking, I'm not sure. But I wasn't that interested. Ultimately, and I don't regret. Actually, I don't regret anything. I think I made the right call at the time, which was, let's just stay here. And I ended up doing five more years of the late night show at NBC, which I loved. So, I ultimately, think that was going to Fox like 10 years in.
I don't know.
Wouldn't have felt right to me. Didn't feel right then. It doesn't feel right now.
And I think there's a reason they really have never had a Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock show.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny because, I've obviously had a couple things too that people could say, would you do that over again? I always feel like it's part of the journey. Some things work out some ways, some things work out in other ways. But are you happy now?
You call your addiction to heroin
that part I would do over again, but some of the other ones.
That was a huge mistake.
Where does the late night format go now? What happens to it?
First of all, I'll preface by saying I have opinions, but nobody knows anything.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you
I don't want to pretend to be the oracle that knows, but
But you're watching how your kids consume media.
Yes. Well, I definitely, for myself personally, wanted to blow things up. I wanted to blow things up when I realized that I was killing time on the air.
Yeah.
That I was doing an hour a night after 25 years and hurrying it up with the first guest so I can get to the second guest, so I can get to the, musical group, or the third guest. And I thought, this is not what these shows should be anymore. I really don't believe that. I know how people consume my work now. And the good news, I mean, there's good and bad with all of it. There's a lot that's changed, but no late night show has the command of the field the way Dave did in, his late night show period, or in his early CBS show period, or the way Johnny did. It's just not going to happen again. There's going to be fads and trends. They last about sometimes, but there's so many of these shows that's the bad news if you're a late night host. The good news is that if you've got something good, a lot of people see it.
Yeah.
And they see it again and again and again. And so the good stuff is, in a way, almost more potent than it ever was. But I want to make sure that the chasm between what I'm doing online and what I'm doing on the linear show isn't so wide, because it feels like there's the linear show and then there's the stuff that happens online. I want to see if I can pull them together closer so that...
Well, podcasts have to be a part of that.
Well, that's why. I mean,
yeah.
So right now the idea is, I'm doing, we took a hiatus so I could do a tour. I'm doing a tour where I can go to cities. I just finished doing a bunch of cities back east. I leave tomorrow and I do Atlanta and I do Nashville. I love live audiences. Love it. That's one of my favorite things. And I love playing in these theaters, and I'm touring with these really hilarious stand-ups. And I go out first. I do half an hour. Then they each do about 15 minutes. Then I do Q&A at the end, which gets really wild and it's fun. I live for that. And then we have a digital team with me. They record a lot of that stuff. We chop it up. We're putting it out there. And I'm hoping that this...
Why can't that just be your late night show where you just travel to every city 250 times a year and you're just on the road?
My wife would leave me pretty quickly. Actually, my wife might prefer it. But I do think what I'm looking for... what I'm looking for is the booking of celebrities can so often drive this tempo of these late night shows. And I still want to talk to celebrities and I still want to do that, but I want to make sure that I have maximum freedom. I'm being a dick. I'm kind of saying I want to do it exactly the way I want to do it because I've been doing it a really long time. So what I'd like to do now is exactly what I want to do. Yeah. And I want to make no concessions.
It sounds like you just need to do a podcast and occasionally do tours. Hey, let's take a quick break to talk about G Suite. It's a suite of cloud-based productivity tools that includes a Gmail, Docs, Slides, Sheets, and Drive. I use all of those things. Though these tools improve your work life, both in terms of your experience and the outputs you create. Hence, their new campaign, Make It with G Suite. You know when you have 20 identical versions of a document labeled final and no clue which is the latest? And you make another version, you name that one final, right? Well, with G Suite by Google Cloud, a range of work apps like Gmail, Docs, and Slides let you make real-time updates to the same document without having to keep track of version after version of a product or a project or a product of a project. And since all the tools are cloud-based, your whole team can access the same document and work on the same page at the same time. To find out more about G Suite's productivity tools, visit gsuite.com. Make it with G Suite by Google Cloud. And since we're here, I wanted to mention our new Ringer podcast, Villains, hosted by the one, the only, Shea Serrano. There's also heavy rumors after the roaring success. I was on House of Carbs this week. I did food news, and we talked a little bit about 3 a.m. meeting with Nephew Kyle. That might just be its own podcast.
You think so?
3 a.m. meeting with Nephew Kyle. Could happen.
Be a short one, huh?
Be a short one. Just be, I ate Chinese food, then I threw up. Check out, keep an eye out for that. 3 a.m. meeting with Nephew Kyle, a podcast that has not been greenlit yet, but Villains with Shea Serrano has. Subscribe now on Apple, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Back to Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, I'm doing a podcast. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. That drops the 19th November. And
I promise you, you're going to love it because
I've been doing it.
I can tell from your show, like there were moments where you'd be like, oh, this should just keep going, but it couldn't. And it's like, all right, let's start a commercial. And then
I can't.
It's kind of the moment's over.
Yeah. And I've done we banked a bunch and I've absolutely loved them. It's a great, and also I have to say, I mean, coming in today and this isn't work. I mean, to me, this is a really great conversation that I'm enjoying. It's nice to hang out with you and talk about this stuff. So it doesn't feel to me like, oh boy, had to go grind that out.
Well, part of it is knowing who would make for a good podcast, though, which I kind of learned the hard way over the course of 12 years. But when you're on a bad podcast, it's like a bad date.
Well, the other thing, have you noticed that when you don't know, sometimes I've been on a podcast and there's no end point.
It just could go on forever.
Even a bad date, there's a natural, well, they brought the check. And so peck on the cheek and I'm going to get my Uber and I'll see you later. But when a podcast, when someone wants to really go deep, we're going deep here with Conan and you're like, wait a minute, I think it's been 5 hours. And they're like, now we're going to do some improv. And you're like, I'm looking.
7 more.
You feel like you're in a burning building and you'd go out through the window if you could. So,
What about you and Greg Daniels working together good? One more time?
Yeah, well, we did. We worked together on a show we really loved.
Like writing a movie?
Movie? No, I've never. I don't think I could.
You never did that?
Never wrote a movie. I never wrote a movie.
What was the show you worked on that you loved?
Well, we worked on a show that was on TBS. We initially called People of Earth that we really liked, and people liked it. But then we had trouble keeping the cast. The cast kept having other things they needed to do. But it was a show we did together that we didn't create it, but Greg was the showrunner and it was my production company. It was just fun working with each other again.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
I'm really jealous of the writing partner thing because I really feel like I just wish I had, you need luck, right? Like what if you don't meet Greg Daniels? Do you have a writing partner at that point?
No, I was.
It has to be like the
I was
fit,
not
right?
someone who was going to have. I didn't even think about having a writing partner until I met Greg, and we met late in school. We met. We didn't really get to know each other till senior year.
Because you fill in the blanks for each other a little bit.
Yeah, and it was interesting. We did complement each other really well, and but also when you're starting your career and you're 21 and you're leaving and you're going to LA and all you've ever known is Boston.
You need somebody else.
I mean, all I knew was Brookline, Boston. That's it for 21 years. And then you get on a cheap airline flight and you go to Los Angeles and you land here and you've got to make it in this weird business. Doing it with someone, a friend who's also an East Coast person who you can share it with, that was huge. I mean, I
wish I had met somebody like that. I've always Koppelman and Levine, the guys who do Billions.
Yeah.
Those guys have been together for like 25 years, like a married couple. But they just work really well together. And I went and I watched them on the set and they're just on the same page. And I think it's pretty rare. I can also see how it would go badly after 4 years. It could go badly,
yeah.
Especially if one person thinks, the other or whatever.
I
didn't
hold
even
out
really-
hope. I think you're going to meet a guy. I really do.
I hope so, man. This is why I keep talking about it.
You
I
just
want
keep bringing
somebody
up-
out there like, hey,
I
Simmons.
wish I had a guy in my life.
I didn't even think of the fact that you were Brookline and then Cambridge, and then you came to LA. That's dramatic.
That was it. I went from
God.
0 to, because where are you from?
I was initially Chestnut Hill.
Chestnut Hill.
Yeah,
I used to go to
that's where
that
I lived
mall,
till-
that big mall in Chestnut
Of
Hill.
course. I used to
That's
steal
where I
hockey
always
cards
thought
from
I'd
there.
meet my girlfriend when I was
Yeah.
in high school and had bad skin.
Yeah.
And guess what? It didn't happen.
Did you ever go to the dump and look for Playboys behind the Chestnut Hill Mall?
My brother Neil used to go to the dump with his friend John Little, and they would throw old TVs off the top of a mound and watch the picture tubes explode. That was my...
It's a lot of great stuff at that
There's
dump.
a lot, man, that dump. Yeah.
Yeah, my parents got divorced. I was there through 7th grade, and then my dad stayed, but I moved with my mom to Connecticut. So I
Where
was
in
basically
Connecticut?
back and forth the next 4 years, Stanford.
Okay. Yep.
And so I was like, I still felt like I lived in Boston, but I was really not there nearly as much as I wanted to be. And plus the sports was like...
Well, then it
you
gets
know.
really screwed up because you're amongst... In Connecticut, it's weird because
Oh, you're like... You're
don't
not
know-
in New York.
you don't know, like I've seen stores. I'll go into a store in Connecticut, like in sort of the Litchfield area,
Yeah.
and it's selling Yankee hats, Yankee caps. But then you drive 2 more miles and you're in a store and they're only
Right.
selling Red Sox hats.
Bizarre.
And you think, this is weird. This is like living in Maryland during the Civil War. I don't know. Are you for the North or for the South? Do you know what I mean? I have no idea.
It's very strange. And then Boston, as you know, it's so kind of distinct. And then Connecticut is not distinct.
Yeah. So I was just there. I was just in Boston, and the intensity of...
Did you go for the baseball or something else?
Well, I was there. I did the tour. I was doing 2 shows at the Wilbur Theater, and then I went and I hung out with my folks. But I was noticing everyone in Boston wears a Red Sox cap, and it's so
amazing.
But what's so funny to me is they wear it like, I root for the Red Sox. You're like, you don't need to tell it. We know. Do you know what I mean? We're on Newbury Street,
Yeah.
and your name is Sully. I get it. You don't need the Red Sox hat, but all my brothers wear Red Sox caps all the time, and it's like they should just put them on squirrels in Boston.
it's like being in a gang.
Yeah,
It's like our
good.
gang.
But
I
so-
went back for the 2 World Series games, and it was the best of Boston. It was just
Yeah,
people showing up super early. Everyone's got drinks, and
right.
I was sitting near the between the third base and left field. We were right on the wall, and they have the outfield umpires
yeah,
for
yeah.
the World Series.
Yeah.
So poor guy's like 10 feet away, and the Boston people,
Yeah.
they got to start talking to him. It's like, hey, Blue, for 9 innings. The poor guy's like, God damn it,
That's what he
short
hears.
straw.
That's what he hears in his sleep. I could only go to 1 World Series game
yeah.
because I've been working so much. But there was 1 game and traveling, and there was 1 game I could go to.
Not the 18-inning game.
No, there was 1 game I could go to, and I knew there was 1 game that I had that Turner gave me tickets for.
Oh.
Game 5.
Oh.
So in LA, and I didn't know, is there going to be a Game 5? What's going to happen? Turns out, Game 5. So I take my son, and we go there, and we're both wearing Red Sox hats and jackets. I've got this great jacket I got a long time ago that's like a vintage Ted Williams era.
Ooh.
And I have a Ted Williams story after this I want to tell you, but like a Ted Williams era baseball, a recreation of that jacket.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the game with my son, and then we get to the last 2 innings, and it becomes clear that the Dodgers are going to lose, and we're in Dodger Stadium.
I was in there too.
Yeah.
The Red Sox fans started moving up.
That's true. I was one of them.
Yeah.
We had really good seats, and then we were like, screw it.
Yeah.
I said, come with me, boy. This is how it's done.
Because all the other fans left.
Yeah, and everyone, they were like, Conan, Red Sox fans let me take, it was near the back behind home plate, just like for the last inning. But this is the difference between LA and Boston. There's a lot of differences, but I'm there, and Dodgers fans start to realize it's not going to happen for them. So they stand up. And these are people with like their faces painted blue.
Yeah.
And they have Dodgers shirt, everything, the hat, everything. They stand up, they turn, they saw me and recognized me, and they saw my Red Sox stuff, and they'd say, well, Conan, it's not going to work out for us this year, but you guys had the better team. Congratulations. And then they shook my hand. And then they'd be like, better luck next year. Well, we'll see about next year. And then the next person would go up. Well, Conan, Dodgers fan all my life, lost my wife this year to cancer. And her dying wish was that they'd win the series. But it didn't happen. Oh, well, Boston's the better team. Good day to you, sir. And I remember thinking, if this role was reversed.
It wouldn't go as well.
And I was at Fenway.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers were about to clinch at Fenway.
Yeah.
And if Boston fans saw a Dodgers fan, he'd pull his heart out through his chest and eat it in front of his child.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was just this funny.
It would
I
have
couldn't
been
relate to it.
You think you're better than me now?
You think you're better than me? I'll fucking throw a battery up your ass.
Well, that didn't work out for us. You clearly had the better team. I really admire Cora, and that Mookie is incredible. Well, we'll see what happens next year. Good day to you, Conan. It's like, what kind of sports fans are you? I see I have perspective. Life is long.
Wow, Dodger fans.
So
They're on 30 years now.
Yeah,
The Boston fans. This is like it's this run that has nothing in common with how any of us grew up.
yep. No.
It's just a lot of winning, and it doesn't make sense, and it feels just surreal, and I don't know how to react to it.
And also, the old Red Sox teams were so haunted by their curse, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It was in their heads. These new teams, since 2004, they think they have as much right to win as anybody.
Yeah.
Which is a completely different mindset.
Yeah.
And, this team, even when they lose an 18-inning game, you thought like, oh, that's gonna take the bone marrow out of them. They're gonna have a hard time bouncing back from this. They're like, oh no, we're still gonna win.
They had like a team meeting after the 18-inning game, and they were like, all right, we all good?
Yeah.
Let's do it. We'll get him back tomorrow.
Yeah. And that's just wrong.
If that had happened in our childhood, they probably would have had to shut down the city for like a week.
Yeah. There's one story. I was driving over here today, and I was like, I got to tell you this story, which is I have one picture. That's not true. I have a couple of pictures on my wall in my study from my late night show.
Yeah.
I've got, okay, me with Obama. That's a picture. I've got me with Dave. I think
you and Melania
in '94. Yeah, me and Melania Trump. The 9 times she's been on. And then I have me with Ted Williams. Ted Williams came on.
The Splinter.
He came on my show, and it reminds me of this time, senior year in college. It's spring, and I decide, I was a good kid, but I decide, screw it, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to play hooky with some friends of mine who had already graduated. And one of them's Jeff Martin, who was working as a sports writer in Boston and went on to, he's a great comedy writer. He and a couple of his friends were going to go down to Florida to watch the Red Sox spring training. And I'm at school, and he said, come on, it was like Ferris Bueller, like just skip and fly down. So I did. I'd never done anything like that before, but I just left school. I blew off classes. I blew off everything. I flew down, and we had a blast. We drove around in one car. We only ate fast food. We played mini golf, and
that sounds like Florida.
Yeah. And we watched the Red Sox. So we're there watching the Red Sox at their spring training camp. And I look over, and there was a young prospect named Sam Horn at the time.
Yeah.
Who could hit the ball like a mile when he could hit it. I don't think it ever panned out for him. But Sam Horn was just amazing. And he was talking to someone and looked like he was getting batting tips. And I'm like, who's he talking to? And I realize that's Ted Williams. Ted Williams was there, and he was the hitting coach. And he's talking to Sam Horn. And this is 1985, April of 85. So I'm like, I want to hear what he's saying to Sam Horn. That's Ted Williams. I got to find out what he's telling. Greatest hitter of all time. What's he telling Sam Horn? So I make my way. There's this long chain link fence, and I try to sneak all the way around the chain link fence so I can, and then I get right up, and I'm as close to Ted Williams as I am to you, and he's talking to Sam Horn, and it looks like an intense conversation, and I eavesdrop. And Ted Williams is bitching to Sam Horn because he had to take his grandchild the night before to see the movie The Last Starfighter. And Ted Williams was like, here I am thinking I'm going to get this profound, we swing under the ball and up at, and up to the right and then, whatever. And he's like, God damn it, they're out in space. And there's goddamn aliens, and then they're on Earth, and I didn't know what the goddamn fucking thing was all about. And I couldn't believe it. And then I thought to myself, I would love it if Ted Williams, cranky, legendary old Ted Williams, reviewed movies. I would just, all right, today's movie, Ted, is whatever. We're gonna
When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, we're gonna look at Harry Met Sally. Well, God damn it! I tried to watch this, and what she's doing in that restaurant is vulgar, and God damn it! Why the? All right, well, join us next week.
Unbelievable.
When we talk about Water for Chocolate. Oh, God damn it! Foreign film. God damn.
Poor Sam Horn. Probably thought he was getting a tip.
Yeah.
Instead, he didn't get to hear about the last
Instead, he just heard.
That's amazing. I thought when you started telling that story, I thought you were going to tell the story that you were there. Sam Horn hit this legendary spring training home run, and I was at the game, but we left the inning before because my buddy Gus had to go, and then we found out he hit this home run into the football stadium.
Yeah.
And I'm still mad about it 31 years later. So I'm
when
glad
I
it
was
wasn't that
there,
story.
he did smash a windshield on a car in the parking lot. I did see that. I didn't, but yeah. I guess his thing was when he did hit it, it was like the natural. It just wouldn't stop and lights would explode.
Did you ever get used to LA? Other than the fact that the Dodger fans congratulate you when you win the World Series?
I'm not built genetically to live out here. I am really genetically engineered to live in a peat bog in Northern Ireland. So what I'm never going to be used to, and I don't mean, when I say in a peat bog, I mean literally in the mud, covered in moist turf. That's where I should be. I'm not supposed to be here. What I do like, because I lived for years and years and years between Saturday Night Live and the Late Night Show. I did 20 years in Manhattan. I love Manhattan, but it never felt like home, because when you grow up in Boston, I was scared in New York when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I was told, all my friends said, if you go to at the height of in the 70s, the height of that great rivalry and Carlton Fisk and Thurman Munson, I was told that if you wore a Red Sox cap at Yankee Stadium, you'd be killed.
Yeah, they'd stab you to death.
They would stab you to death, and that the police wouldn't do anything. And I believed it, because that's how intense it was. I really believed that.
I don't know if that was necessarily untrue advice either.
Right. I think they would make some effort to solve the crime, but eventually, they'd make a show of trying to solve the crime. But that'd be a good cold case show where you just solve Boston fans that were murdered at Yankee Stadium, and it's so clear who did it, but they're like, well, I guess we'll never know. No, it's really clear.
That's the guy covered in blood right there.
It's that guy over there in the Yankees hat who's covered in blood. Well, another case that will go unsolved. But yeah, that was, I loved Boston. I mean, I loved New York, and I loved living there, but it never felt like, well, this will be my home, because I thought eventually they'll find out I'm a Sox fan and murder me.
I went a step further. I could never have lived there at any point. I just see being around the Yankee hats. I feel the same way when I go to a Laker game and I'm around all the jerseys. I actually feel uncomfortable. It's unsettling.
I was
to be in that mix.
My son was in a league. We came out here and he was in a league where playing with these other kids, and it was kind of random the teams were, the Pistons, the Lakers, the Celtics, the Knicks, and it just random. And my son was 7, and he was in this league, and I would go to his games, and the team that he was assigned to was based on literally where you lived, the luck of the draw. We were the Lakers. So I would go, and my son was, 7 years old and wearing a Lakers jersey, and he'd get on the court with his other friends. And I I kind of learned, like, at first it was jarring, and I'd have to take a picture of him and send it home, and my brothers would give me shit about it. And
Photoshop the jersey,
yeah, exactly. I should have photoshopped it, but I got over it, and I just enjoyed watching my son, kind of try to play basketball at 7 years old or whatever. And then one day, Mark Wahlberg shows up because his son's in the same league, and he's talking to me, and he's like, "What the fuck you doing, man?" He's really mad. And I was like, well, this is where his friends are on this team. He's like, oh, fuck, my son? No, we moved to where my son would be on the bus. He just would not. I forget what he did. He did some extraordinary thing. He didn't literally move, but he took extraordinary measures.
He just pulled some Mark Wahlberg shit.
He pulled some Mark Wahlberg shit to make sure that his son was wearing a Celtics uniform, and he could not believe that I was letting my son wear a Lakers uniform.
This was the original plot for Mile 22.
Yes.
Then they flipped it.
They flipped it. Yeah.
Yeah, my son was a junior Laker one year, and I didn't feel good about it. But he was 6. Like, at that point,
I didn't feel good about it.
They're not still pooping on themselves at age 6. So
exactly.
The jersey's fine.
Half of them, they get the ball and they just sit on it,
yeah.
and they think it's something to rest on. But I realized, like, the level of, okay, this is the difference between us.
Yeah.
I will accept. My son wants to be on a team with his friends. He can wear a Lakers uniform. You probably contacted the commissioner of the local league. I think you probably threatened him with some of you and your friends from Somerville came by and threatened him with the leg of a chair. And, and now he's wearing a Celtics uniform.
I think Mark Wahlberg, he wakes up at 2:30.
Yeah.
Did you read
Says
that story?
his prayers.
He does his workout routine. He has eggs, and then he just threatens the commissioner of whatever league.
Yeah, whatever league.
Until he's on the right
That's
team.
what's in there. It's in the itinerary.
I'm always jealous of those people that get up. Like Bob Iger, they always said he got up at 4.
It's stupid.
Gets up at 4 and does the treadmill. I don't know. How do you do that? I love sleeping.
Yeah, it's also a mistake. It's going to be, let's just see how long they live. I swear to God, sleep is more important. I swear to God, sleep is more.
6 hours.
And when people tell me that I get 3 hours of sleep, and then I get up and I have a whey protein shake and I run 65 miles and then I pour lava up my ass, I just think, okay, enjoy that. Our time here on this earth is very short, and you're fucking it up.
Might be shorter than you think.
Exactly.
Conan.
Yes.
This was a pleasure.
This is great.
I didn't want to keep you for 7 hours. This is right around the time.
Man,
I usually go around 80 minutes. This is good. You can always come back.
You should just, I go 80 minutes.
I'm excited.
That should be your line in a bar.
I just strong 80 minutes.
I went 80 minutes strong. With who? Conan O'Brien. Okay, well,
80 straight.
That's your thing, yeah. No, this is.
I'm excited to listen to your podcast.
Thank you, and you know what? Congrats on this one. I swear to God, they told me. They said there's literally like 2 podcasts you should do if you want to get the word out on your podcast.
Oh, that's
and you're
nice.
one of them, and I was happy because I've listened to yours, and I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to talk to him, and we can.
Well, while we're passing around compliments, I would be remiss if I said the people here, you had a big impact on a lot of them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, especially the show, the NBC show from the early days.
Yeah.
Pre-internet.
Yeah.
Once the internet came in, it kind of screwed things up in a lot of different ways.
Sure.
But that sweet spot of like 89 to 96.
Sweet time, yeah.
The stuff that was impactful really was impactful.
It's not. It's a nice, I'm very.
And then it just kept going.
I'm very grateful. Like my
word. It's a cool time.
My word is and I say this all the time to people that got in around the time I did. I'm like, wow, the fact that I got to make comedy with so many amazing people, just dumb luck, and just I'm really blessed. It's a nice thing.
What's Smigel's next act?
He is unstoppable. He's an unstoppable force.
He's one of my favorite email people.
Yeah.
He'll send me just these random crazy NBA emails or.
He is, Robert, his next, first of all, he just contacted me. I've been touring, so we're not doing shows right now. We're going back in January. And he said, he's like, oh, I have a good idea for Triumph, but you guys aren't on the air. And I was like, well, see if like someone else wants to do it, just, and so he went and did it.
He did it last week.
He did it for Colbert. And it was really funny. And I was thinking, yeah, Robert is the most prolific comedy writer I've ever known. And I've known them all. He's an endless fountain of ideas. He'll have 5 ideas at one time.
Yeah.
And so his burden is just figuring out usually which idea to follow. That is not most people in comedy's problem. Most people are trying to come up with one good idea. He's usually got like, yeah, I've got these 9 ideas. And he'll write me these really long emails describing each one in detail. And I'm like, I like the first. Do that one. Yeah, but listen to the second. I like that one too. Do one of those 2. Here's the third. I would do one of those 3.
Wait, there's 8 more.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good last question. What sketch at SNL were you the most jealous of that somebody else came up with?
Wow, that's a really good one. Man, it would probably be a Jack Handey sketch just because his mind was so different.
Yeah.
And I'd think, how did you think of that? And I don't know that it's one sketch that Jack Handey wrote because he wrote so many, but he would just think of an idea like Johnny Acid, which was, he was sort of making fun of in the 50s and 60s on TV, cowboys had special skills. There was the rifleman who was really good with a rifle, and then there's a guy who was really good with a whip. And then there was a guy who was really good with a knife. And then there was a guy who was and so he came up with Johnny Acid. And he carried vials of acid and he'd throw acid at people. And it just bummed everyone. Everyone in the saloon would be like, someone would be like, you better be moving on. I think you should be moving on. And Johnny Acid would throw acid at him and the guy would scream as his face burned. And everyone there would be like, not cool, man. That was bad. Bummed everyone out. And there was a song about Johnny Acid. And I thought, shit, I wish I had thought of that. So probably Jack Handey.
There was a lot of songs with the sketches back then. Like the little quick snappy.
I remember we just thought we had to. We wrote a sketch for Tom Hanks called Mr. Short-Term Memory.
Oh, yeah.
And I remembered Robert saying, well, we need a song for it. And so we wrote, I think it was Mr. Short-Term Memory. He shouldn't have sat under that pear tree.
Right.
Now he has no memory. He'll never know, but you'll love him so because he's Mr. Short-Term Memory. Why? Why did everything need a song? But we just...
Pat was like that too. It's time for androgyny.
Yeah. Yeah,
there was like this 5 years where there was, but it was always good. There was a lot of game show sketches too.
Look again. That's the wonderful
Look
thing
back
about
under that hood.
The wonderful thing about being a fan of something is that your mind does its own editing.
What do people mention more to you, Simpsons or Saturday Night Live? Must be Simpsons, right?
It's Simpsons.
Yeah,
Simpsons is just, when I tour, there's a religion and it's worldwide and they know the episodes.
That's why I didn't even want to bring it up.
And they know stuff that I don't know because guess what? I stopped writing there 25 years ago.
And you were only there for like 2-3 years, right?
I was there, a little over 2 seasons. And again, I was there at a nice, sweet time. And
it was like the first famous season that you were there.
And I loved it, but people will ask me trivia and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm rediscovering The Simpsons through my son. My son loves The Simpsons and he's watching all of them and I'm watching them with him. That's our thing. They don't get to watch.
Did you get to do the whole, I wrote on this one. Son.
You know what? Kind of cool. It's the first time I've seen him show a glimmer of respect for the old man.
Impressed at all by
we
you?
watched one of my episodes. I think it was Homer Goes to College, and it said it came up written by Conan O'Brien, and he happened to see that, and he just looked over at me. I was like, "Yep, the old man." I could just see a little moment of him thinking, "My dad might have been worth something once," Then it was a minute later, he didn't care about me again.
My son was impressed when we were in Orlando in August and Triple H came up to me with the big handshake.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, oh, I was like, all right, that's the only time I guess I'm going to impress you.
Later on, found out you paid Triple H.
I did.
It wasn't even Triple H. It was a guy it was 3 people who wear a costume and play Triple H at parties.
Good luck with everything.
Hey,
thanks for coming
so much.
on.
Hey, I'll come back.
Great.
I'll shake your hand. Even though no one's seeing it, we just shook hands.
Thank you. That was awesome.
All right, take care.
All right. Thanks so much to Conan. Thanks to ZipRecruiter.com/BS. That is one of my favorite URLs. They are a presenting sponsor. If you want to learn more about them, go to that URL. Thanks to FanDuel, where I'm going to win money this weekend. It's happening. I have the best FanDuel single entry lineup, Superflex lineup that I've ever put out. I'll read it to you on Sunday night when I do the pod with Sal. You'll be amazed that I didn't win. You can win. They have tons of ways to play. Gridiron pick'em contest, pick winners, no spreads, 10K split amongst the top pickers, or just play daily fantasy. Do whatever you want. I've tried other DFS sites. If you're not a fantasy expert, FanDuel is clearly the place to play. New users get a $5 bonus when they make the first deposit. Come play with me at FanDuel.com/BS. And by the way, if you want to buy some Ringer merch for the holidays, go to TheRinger.com/shop. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, stickers, you name it. It's all there. T-shirts of some of your favorite shows on the Ringer Podcast Network. T-shirts of this show.
I need that Pearl Jam one.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
There's the new Pearl Jam one, right? It says, but first Pearl Jam. You
With
can
like
buy
a big
that.
foam finger. Yeah.
Yeah. Kyle likes that one. Kyle, I'm going to get that one for you for Christmas.
It's easy. Check it off the list.
All right. Enjoy the weekend. We are back Sunday night. I will be coming right from the Survivor Series with my lunatic son. The odds of us coming up with a parent corner during that Survivor Series is off the board in Vegas. Until then, enjoy the weekend.